We're here on site in Atlantic City. Coach Erin Doughty, Derek DeGallo, I'm William Rosen. The student section starts next. Welcome back to the student section, a podcast for student athletes, and at a time, a Marist student athlete joins us today. Coach Erin Doughty, the women's basketball team. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, of course. Well, Derek is here. Welcome to the show as well, Derek.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Inaugural co-hosting debut, and we're on location here in Atlantic City. We're very happy to be here. So let's get started. 25 minutes, some good questions. Last year, first season as a head coach in Marist. This year, season 2, back in Atlantic City. What are you trying to prove to yourself and your team?
Well, we just, want to come here and have a good showing. Obviously we're all coming here with one goal in mind, and that's winning on Saturday. But it's one game at a time. It's one opponent at a time, one challenge at a time. So, right now we're focused on Mount, and we'll see how that goes on Thursday, and then we'll move on from there.
And then you talk about going up against Mount in the first round. This year you were able to get to 5 seed. What was it like, especially with the preseason polls expected to be at the bottom of the conference? Now you're at the middle to upper edge of the conference.
Yeah, well, the thing we talked about as a team is, preseason rankings mean nothing. We used to say the same thing when we were picked first. So, we were, honestly, we didn't really agree with the preseason ranking. So, we kind of took that as like putting a chip on our shoulder and going out and performing and making sure that, that wasn't where we finished. And, this year with not all the teams making it, obviously our first goal was to, be in the top 10, so we got down here. And then the second goal was to get a bye, so that you're playing 3 games instead of 4, potentially if you get to the final. So, we knew our expectations were much higher than 11th. Our goal as a staff was to move into the top 5 after last season. So, we feel that, that goal we were able to accomplish. We want to do more things. We're not satisfied with 5. We think we actually could have done a little bit better. But, making strides from last year to this year, I think has been tremendous, and I think really good for the confidence of our group and our staff.
Confidence of your group, you bring in a few new players. Danny Williamson, all rookie nod in the MAAC. You bring in Malia Egan. You bring in Brooke Jarvis. You bring in a lot of players who bring a lot of grit and toughness. How impactful have they been in this first season?
Yeah, absolutely. We knew we had, some holes to fill. We knew we needed help at the post position. We knew we needed, some people who could shoot the ball a little bit better than we did last year, because that was a big thing. We had Kiara and Zaria who could, attack the room, but when you don't have shooters who can spread the floor, it's easy to help and make things difficult for them. So, Danny was impactful from the start in terms of a 3-level scorer, someone who's willing to take a big shot, which, as a freshman is really great. And then, Malia added, some speed to our point guard position. I think her and Jackie complement each other really well, because we kind of have the experienced veteran who's, more tactful and, not as, fast and quick. And Jackie relies on her smarts and, reading a defense, and Malia can use her speed to get by people. So, having them to be able to mix and match depending on who we're playing has been really, really helpful.
And you kind of talk about the difference between year 1 and year 2. What was the biggest lesson learned from year 1 as the head coach of the Marist women's basketball team?
Well, I think the first thing was if everyone told me the first year is really hard, and I was just like, yeah, but I've been at Marist forever. Like, I think it'll be okay. And Coach George just helped prepare me for this. Well, you're never really prepared. And I think the biggest thing that was hard for me was adjusting to the dynamic of assistant coach to player and head coach to player. And our whole team knew me as an assistant coach, so I had to navigate that with them. So that was quite a process. And I think with a lot of them, we're still kind of doing it just because of how I'd built a relationship with them. I think the biggest thing I learned was consistency in working on things. I think you put stuff in as the year goes on, and then sometimes you never go back and revisit those little details because we taught them, but you have to continue to hammer home the little things, the fundamentals, the standards in our defense and offense and things like that. So we were much more consistent with doing things over and over and over this year, so that hopefully it stuck and it has carried through the year.
You mentioned Kira. She's a one-time member of the student section. She'll be joining us later in the spring. She is a great public speaker. She really likes to talk, and she actually has fun doing it.
Yeah.
How important is she and other people in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, Kira's, she does love to talk. She'll tell you that. But she's such a, her voice on the court is great. She's always talking. That helps us on offense and defense. And, we comment often in practice how, Kira and Jackie are not on the court anymore, and it's not as loud. You don't hear us as much. So I think they're helpful in, with their teammates. I think they're willing to speak up in huddles. I think they're willing to speak up in the locker room. And, that's, you need someone who's willing to speak up when things are needed to be said, because sometimes it's hard. It's not everything's comfortable to say, or, not everything we say as coaches or players is always positive. So having people who are comfortable in that situation and is really great for us. And then Kira she's such an ambassador for Marist and Marist athletics and Marist basketball. And she loves her Marist experience. She's a Marist family kid, and she's a great personality to be around.
She's the pride and joy of athletics. One of them. We have so many at the school, but one of them.
Absolutely.
You always see her around. Her and Jackie and Jackson and everybody. I always say this on the show here when we have any athlete on. Everyone feels like they're part of like an 845 family, a Poughkeepsie family. Once you step on to the McCann or the Tenney Stadium, you genuinely become, it's not cliche, but you genuinely become some sort of Marist family. You feel it yourself when you play.
Absolutely. We talk about, one of the things that we want our players to leave Marist with is a family that shows up for them for life. So, sisters, coaches, whatever, we show up for happy times, we show up for sad times, but you have people, and it transcends like the people you were at Marist with. So, I've had teammates of mine come back, and they go in the locker room and hang out with the players and make connections. And I think that's such an important piece of a program that wants to be successful is having past players interact with the current players and kind of bond over this shared experience.
You talk about the shared experiences. Coaches always talk about that they rather have like a players-led team than a coaches-led team. What is the connection between everybody? Because I know last year there was a little bit of a, not lack of connection, but there wasn't as big of a connection in terms of the team. Yeah,
I think this group is way more connected than last year's team, for whatever reason. But I do think they're growing as leaders. I think we have a big junior class who is very impactful in many ways, not just on the court, and they're growing into their leadership style, their leadership strengths, their leadership areas that they need to be better. So yes, I would say we have a player-led team, but they're constantly getting feedback from us as to how to be better leaders or how we could have handled something different, and they're learning the importance of communicating with us, because we're with them, for 3 hours a day for practice. Well, there's, lots of other time that we're not there, and the team is together and, helping us understand, team dynamics that we don't see all the time. So I think they're growing as leaders, and that you have seen that throughout the year, and I think it'll just continue to benefit our program, this weekend and moving forward.
One of the highlights that, for me, whenever I'm with the team or around the team, one of the highlights, of course, is just the coaching staff. Yourself included, Coach Nick Volchuk, Gabby, and Coach Mo. Everybody is just so enthusiastic, and the coaching staff, from what what you've told me and what they've told me, everyone meshes well, and everyone is kind of on the same page. And when you're not, you try and get each other on the same page. When you see it, how impactful is the coaching staff to you, and how personable are they?
Yeah, I love my staff. We get along really well as a group of 5, but they're also so impactful with our players. They are, constantly players in the offices. They'll go out and get coffee. At practice, they all make sure they say hi to everybody on the given day, and then the energy they give. I don't know if you watch our team in warm-ups, but our staff, they're out there like
they are hype.
Yes.
Coach Nick Volchuk, Mo Crisp. Mariah Crisp. They're enthusiastic.
Absolutely.
Threes are made that they go nuts.
Yes.
Defensive stops, they go nuts, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think our players feed off of it. We talk about all the time that the players feed off our staff's energy. So, we try to be as enthusiastic and positive as possible, while also critiquing and challenging and making people better. But I really hit the jackpot with the hires we made last summer. Coach Nick and I were just talking about it last night that, we had staff move on all for great reasons, and they, I still talk to them all the time, so it's not anything bad there. But, that happened, and we still needed to fill 2 roster spots. So the 2 of us were like, okay, we're going to do the roster, and then we're going to worry about staff. And, we were able to do that, and I think we, made the right choices and, got really lucky with adding Brittany Shields and Mariah Crisp and then Gabby Mendonca later in the summer, because they've been wonderful additions and have made, immediate impact.
And then you talk second-year season, coaches all the time either rather have it be have every single player be coached the same way or a different way. What is your mindset in terms of, coaching a player the same way or different and all that?
So I think you have to learn your players, and my whole thing is I want to get the best out of them when they're here. I want them to leave here, getting as close to their full potential as possible. And if you don't understand how to interact with a person, that's never going to happen. So in general, the way I coach at practice is the way I coach. I don't do something with one person and not with another, but in terms of like how I interact with players or how I critique someone as an individual, I've had to learn what works best for them. Some people like to be pulled aside and told things. Some people need to be told in front of the whole group, and I think the players have to learn that too, because they're like, wait, why does she do that with that person and not with that person? And I think once they understand that it's how people tick and what works for certain people and for certain dynamics with me and an individual, I think they get it. But I've just learned I don't think you can interact with anyone.
Yeah,
the same as
everyone's
everyone
different.
else.
Yeah.
So in order to be the best coach I can and to get them to be the best player that they can, I think I need to learn those things about them.
We know you're busy, so we're going to give you one more question. But this question is the first time that we can ask this in a calendar year. The MAAC switched from 13 teams to 10 teams. Since we had the addition of Sacred Heart and MAAC, that means only 11 teams to 13 teams, now only 10 teams get into the Atlantic City Tournament. Trying to make sure that you got here for the first time, since it's not automatic, how impactful was that and how important was that for you to get back here in Atlantic City?
Yeah, I think, especially with the preseason pick and with the landscape of college basketball right now, like you never know, like with transfers in and out, like rosters can change, without even, the other coaches knowing. Most of the time, like these people are graduating, these people are coming in, so there's a natural progression of knowing like where people are going to be in terms of talent. But, now there's a little bit of an unknown. So, we felt coming in that we could definitely be in the top 10. We also knew that, things could happen where we're not. So there's an added stress there, but I think it adds a competitive element to the regular season. I think, both the men's side and the women's side had spots that, came down to the last weekend. The men had one that came down to the last game. So, I think it makes, the regular season, more exciting and, the regular season games more important. That, you gotta, I've always said like the tournaments are great, and I think it's great that that's where the automatic bid comes from because there's so much excitement. But you do all this work all year, so you want to be rewarded for that as well.
Poughkeepsie faithful, they were there. What's your message to them as we wind down the season? They were really supportive all season.
Absolutely. We talk about all the time. We have the best fans in the MAAC, and they continue to show up night after night. And I think this year there was a little more energy in McCann, which was great. So I'm hoping we'll continue to build on that in the future. And we greatly appreciate all the support from the community, from our students, from our other athletes, and we love you guys. So we'll keep working, and you guys keep showing up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. 2 years, second-year head coach, Erin Doughty. We are going to see how you do in Atlantic City. Good luck to you. Good luck to your staff. Good luck to your players.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Students Section Podcast, a podcast for Marist student athletes. And this time we're joined by the man who controls everything Marist student athlete-wise, to an extent, Tim Murray, Athletic Director. Welcome to the show, Tim Murray.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. And I think it's a great thing for all of you to be here. And I enjoyed the work that you and your teammates and classmates did at the Super Bowl as well. So you guys have really, kicked our sports comm program up quite a notch.
Derek DeGallo, of course, joining us out of Rhode Island.
Yeah, it's
kind of a long ways away, but not really. So I wore my Keene blue.
You really got dressed up.
Yeah, I did. They got a big game on, so I figured why not represent Rhode Island in some capacity.
Marist student athletes, they love coming on. I don't know if you know this, but they actually love talking to us. They actually love talking. You see it a lot, right? Where these student athletes, they're on the court, but maybe people don't know what exactly their lives are or their stories. They have some interesting stories over the years. You've definitely heard some great stories, but they love coming on.
No, I'll tell you what, and I've been the athletic director for 30 years. I coached here for 4 years before that. And I say this to the athletes every year. Every year that goes by for me, our athletes continually impress me, by what they do, not necessarily on the court and in the pool and so on, but more what they do outside and the type of people that they are. And I think that says a lot about Marist and the type of institution that we are and the type of people, both as students and as faculty and staff, that we attract. So it's a special place.
It's a special place, but right now we're in Atlantic City, where things look a little bit different. 13 teams are now in the MAAC. Only 10 qualify. As you are, the head of the basketball programs, how important was it to get to Atlantic City now that it wasn't guaranteed?
Really important.
Really important.
Well, and I think one of the things when I think back to the discussions that we had as athletic directors and senior women's administrators, in how we evaluate the tournament, and should we have 10 teams or 13 teams as we just went through the expansion. It's tough because there are coaches, obviously, they want to be in the tournament, right? And I was a big advocate for, hey, let's just keep it at 10, right? But then the ADs would look at me and say, hey, Tim, 2 years ago, you were an 11th seed. You ended up in the final against Iona. We all remember that. So it is tough in making that cut. But one of the things we talked about this morning that I realized, and so did the other folks in the room, was the last 2 weeks of the schedule for both men and women, people were really locked in.
It was important. It was
really
really
important because no coach, no institution wants to be left out of coming here, right? So, but I think it played better. Again, both of our teams are in, right? As a 3 seed and a 5 seed, we're in a pretty good spot, here at Marist. But I'm probably sing a different tune if I was on the other side of that issue. But no, I think this is a great opportunity for our athletes to showcase themselves, obviously, in a great venue with a lot of media attention, and it's a great way to culminate a season.
And then you talked about being here for 30 years. From year one to now, what is the biggest lesson you've learned with all the changes that have happened with NIL, transfer portal, athletics, MAAC expanding, so much going on?
Yeah, I'm not sure I could posture it into lessons. I think that I will say this, the speed of change over the last 2 years has been so much faster than the speed of change for my first 28 years. I mean, it's just been some of the things and the conversations that we just had this morning as athletic directors. Having those conversations even 5 years ago, you would have said, no,
not imaginable.
No, yeah, it's just not happening. Name, image, and likeness has just totally changed things. The portal is, free agencies, right? I mean, that's kind of in essence what it is in a way. So yeah, I mean, it's changed dramatically. I think league affiliations have changed. We're at 13 teams, right? And there's talk now that there may be even some more transition, as schools continue to increase basically the buy-in for NIL. Will that force other schools to say, hey, you know what, that's just not something that we can commit to, so we're going to have to go over here to League B as opposed to League A. So is that coming? Well, potentially. I mean, I think that's out there. That's certainly out there. Again, the transition of change has just been so incredibly impactful. I think the other thing too that's really important with NIL, it's more than just athletic decisions now. These are institutional decisions. We're being pushed with the settlement coming up on April 7th to commit to being an opt-in school or not an opt-in school. That's not a necessary decision an athletic director can make. I have my own opinions that I obviously share with Kevin, our president, but that's an institutional decision as to how you're going to approach those. So yeah, that's just one piece of the seismic change that we've seen.
Something that isn't changing, it was announced a few weeks ago that ESPN and the MAAC have renewed their rights for broadcasting. How important is it to continue to be on ESPN? And in this case, it's going to expand a little bit heading into the postseason next year.
Oh yeah, no, it's critically important. I mean, if you're a student athlete, you want exposure, right? And especially now in this time of NIL, you want people to know who you are, right? I forget the young man's name at St. Peter's with the mustache.
Doug
Eddard.
Who ended up going to Bryant.
Yeah, right? And how he utilized that being on TV. Now that was even a bigger stage with the NCAA tournament, but those things all matter to young men and women who want to compete, particularly men's and women's basketball. So it's really, really critical, and it's fun. I think the thing that's interesting is where for so many years the NCAA, you were just not allowed to even think about paying a player, Yet if you were talented in the band or a talented sideline reporter, right?
I appreciate it.
Right? Maybe.
Yeah, I would. If you say it, if you say it,
why should someone say, well, you can't earn any money then, right?
It's a fair argument.
Yeah. So I think one of the things with all of this change is, with whenever you have change, there's always you're going to have to. You'll come out at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that you position yourself. And you approach it not from like, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is not the way it used to be. Mm-hmm. I think you have to flip that and say, all right, this is different, but how do we make this, advantageous for our student athletes and for our institution? And I think that's on me, right? How do we come out on the back end of this in a better place than we were, understanding that our landscape has changed?
When you talk about change happening, and it continues to change, what is your mindset in terms of, change is going to happen? How do you adjust? What are your adjustments like with so much change happening?
Marist University. There's so much going on.
MAAC is up in the air. They might change their name. Not having it be the MAAC. Just so much change just happening.
You got to work. You just got to work.
You gotta work.
You can't be asleep at the switch, right? You have to engage with other people. What are some of the conversations you're having? I mean, there are a lot of people, just in the NIL market, right?
Yep.
How is that person who deals with NIL every day, all day, whether it's high school kids, whether it's junior college kids, believe it or not, whether it's Division I players, what are some of the things that are going on? So I've had plenty of conversations with folks like that every day, all day, that's their world, So I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, it's not going to come to you. You got to go to it. You got to make it happen, So you got to stay current. You really got to stay current. I read a lot of the day-to-day stuff, what's going on with the settlements. What are the other lawsuits that are coming, believe it or not? I mean, that's a big deal right now. It's just, we're hopefully going to settle on April 7th, 3 class action lawsuits, all in one, with a pretty good settlement. It could have been, if it went to trial, it could have been a lot different outcome. So that's settled, right? But then there's other employment issues that are coming up. They're right around the corner. And this settlement doesn't necessarily protect you from the next antitrust case. So, it's just really just staying current. And as I said, things are changing by the day. So it's just being out there.
On the men's side, the best season since 06-07, the fans came out, the media came out, I would say the students came out even. It was a different feel this year than in the previous years. And I've only been here a few years, but from what I've heard, this season was special. The win streaks, the attention on the national stage. How important was it for you to see Marist in this light?
Critical. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the timing of this successful run, getting 20 wins, was really helpful. I mean, one of the challenges that this whole opt-in and everything we're talking about is just generating revenue. Right?
Of course.
And that revenue is going to be generated by people that are vested in terms of the product and what Marist has. So we have a lot of alums out there that have been working hard in their careers after leaving Marist that have been very, very successful. And now they're looking at their alma mater saying, wow, that's really terrific, So, I mean, and even former players, that have, called me and said, hey, what's going on? And, there's one player who played back in the Ron Petro days. He's now retired. He worked at the NFL league offices for years. He's been a regular at our games. He lives in Connecticut. He comes over with his wife. Many times he brings friends, and he loves it now. So no, those things are all really important. And if you look at how colleges image themselves, I mean, we have a quality basketball program with a really, really good coach, some really quality young men who compete both on the court and in the classroom. And those are all good things. And when you have success, it's even better.
You know what I always say about Marist? Success is at the forefront, but something about Tenney Stadium and McCann and even the campus, it doesn't feel like there's a sense of, corporateness or a sense of we're trying to be, we're not trying to be friendly. It feels like a big homey environment. When you step into McCann, I mean, you feel it. You're incredibly friendly. No, I'm serious. You're a genuinely nice person. We get to see you do your day-to-day every day, and it's genuinely exciting. Is that something that you value as an institution in Division I level?
Well, I think recruiting is the most critical thing in building any program, right? You got to have really good players. And whenever anyone, whether they're an athlete or a non-athlete, comes onto Marist campus, they generally get a feel just like you described. Like there's a strong sense of community. People are excited to see you, even if they don't know you. That you have, you're looking at Marist as a potential student. So yeah, all those things are really important. And I gotta be honest, when I've been at Marist for 30 years, as I've said, it's a long time. It's my career, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't appreciate. When I drive onto campus, and what a really terrific and special place it is, And I've had the opportunity lately to engage with a lot of alumni, whether they're athletic alumni or just general students, and everyone has that same feel, right? It's based, whether it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. It's been really exciting. Like tomorrow, kind of on your point, Will, the excitement that basketball has created. So we have a new football coach last year, right? Kind of had a tough year, but we're building what I believe is a really strong mid-major, FCS football program. And we're going to bring down about 7 or 8 of our top football alums that want to get together, right, and start organizing a little bit better to support our football program. And that's a terrific thing. And here's 7 guys that have been very successful, and now looking to share that success with Marist students, Marist football players. So having a good basketball team, right, is allowed us the opportunity, me and Coach Willis, to organize this group. And, so you'll see some of these guys around. They're not as big as they used to be.
That's really special.
It's terrific. And hopefully they have an opportunity to spend some time with Kevin, our president, who obviously will be here as well, with many of the other MAAC presidents. So, that's great.
For you as an athletic director, you talk about support. What is kind of the support, at least for this season, not just for men's basketball, but for women's basketball as well? They've had a lot more attendance numbers on the senior year, freshman, sophomore year, not as many people going to the games.
Yep.
What is the support of the entire Marist community going and showing out to actual events, especially sporting events?
Yeah, no, it's really, really helpful. Players feel it, coaches feel it, and most importantly, recruits feel it. I can't tell you how thrilled I am with our women's basketball team and the turnaround that they had from last year. There's no more lovely person and Marist to the core than Erin Doughty. Last year was tough. First year head coach, it's hard. Even though, what do they say, that 18 inches from one chair to another when you become a head coach, that's a big jump. And I think she's a tactically an extremely good coach. She's extremely well liked by her players. Those are big components of having a successful basketball program. And I think she's well on her way, with the success this year and hopefully, over the next couple of days here at the tournament. But a shout out to Erin and the rest of the team, and with most of our players returning, which is pretty exciting. As we close out,
Atlantic City, the tournament starts. We're filming on one day, and we start the next day. 2 games, 1 day. As you continue on here in Atlantic City, and as we return back to Poughkeepsie, what's your message to the Marist fans?
My message is thank you for your support this year, through the entire year, and whether you can be with us here in Atlantic City, and hopefully all of you can, but if not, you're watching and you're supporting us. Because we need your support. I think we have 2 very, very capable basketball teams that just need to win 3 in 3 days. But thank you guys for doing this. This is really
thank you. Thank you. Athletic Director Tim Murray. That's fantastic.
Very much. We'll appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Let's go Foxes.
Let's go Foxes. We welcome you back to the Student Section Podcast, a podcast for Marist student athletes and by Marist student athletes. Not today, but we are here with Sam Federman. I'm William Rosen. Derek DeGallo to my left. Sam Federman, of course, you know him as the man who does everything MAAC related. What are you best known for in your eyes, Sam?
I think the MAAC preview is big. Going to almost 100 college basketball games a year is also pretty big. And just being an all-out MAAC and Northeast college basketball sicko.
This guy, for those who don't know, is the definition of journalism in our conference. First of all, look at the hat. Take a look. Can you guarantee if anybody has a hat like this that wears it as often as you?
I don't even think Travis does.
Oh, that'd be a great conversation.
The umpires
Yeah.
for baseball, I think they have to.
That would be concerning if they didn't. So Sam, everything in the MAAC, you know him. You follow him on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. You follow him on YouTube. He is everywhere. Derek, I mean, you've been here longer than I have, but this guy's been around.
Yeah, you've been around for a while, and you start with MAAC, and nobody kind of thinks of the MAAC conference as the biggest thing. So why choosing the MAAC to write about?
It's where I live. I'm from Westchester County, New York. When I was a junior in high school, it was just where I could go to games. I could go to Iona. I could go to Manhattan. Those were the two I started with the most. And then I started going out to Fairfield games, going to St. Peter's, Marist, Quinnipiac, like Siena, Ryder. Could get basically anywhere in the MAAC within a couple hours, and can't really do that with any other conferences. Big East, there's flights. CAA, there's flights. A10, there's flights. NEC, I mean, MAAC wasn't in the MAAC when I started covering the NEC. When I started covering the MAAC, they were in the NEC, and the NEC also has some schools that are a little further out there. The MAAC was always the easiest for me to get to, and just think it's awesome basketball. It's really competitive every single year. Obviously, my first couple of years covering the league, Iona was really dominant, but since then it's been very balanced, and even after Iona, it was always really balanced. I think this year, the most close games out of any college basketball league, the fewest blowouts out of any college basketball league. What more can you ask for?
Mm-hmm. You cover the MAAC and you live this conference. You've created such a great repertoire with coaches and players. How do you like the atmosphere around you being in this room? We had a press conference, and they know you, and they genuinely, thoroughly enjoy you covering the sport for them.
I really appreciate that, and I know that the coaches and players appreciate it as well, and I think that's what makes covering mid-major basketball so special. You could go cover high-major basketball, and I've done it, and I enjoy it, but like it's much less personal. You don't really feel the connection the same way you do with this, because every single one of these coaches that's going to step on stage this week, and the three that didn't, I had phone calls with in the preseason for my MAAC season preview. I've been texting and calling with them throughout the year for stories that I'm working on, and players as well. And these guys, I get access. I can get access to them pretty quickly, pretty easily, because these sports information directors across the conference are so receptive to all the coverage. It really starts with them. Mike Ferraro.
They respect. I got to say, Mike Ferraro, RSID, who was one of the better people I know, really respects what you do.
Yeah, I had to name drop Mike Ferraro. There's Brian Byer at Iona, Pete Janney at Manhattan, and I feel bad for mentioning them now, because now I'm not going to mention everybody else, but all 13 SIDs in this conference are excellent, have really helped me out with this coverage, and all 13 coaches and every player in this league that I've ever talked to, and even the ones that I haven't spoken to. I really appreciate the way that they appreciate any sort of coverage, because it's all so big for them. It doesn't matter if I'm writing for Mid-Major Madness or the New York Times. Any coverage for these guys is huge for all of them.
Yeah, especially when you look at the MAAC, we talked about it earlier, not as well known as the bigger conferences, so getting coverage is certainly huge. But in terms of for you, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned throughout your coverage from MAAC basketball?
There's a lot of basketball lessons that I've learned in there. And if you asked me 4 years ago, what I knew about basketball would be a lot less than I know now. And then as a journalist myself, I feel like just covering all my bases, making sure that I'm asking the right questions and getting, because if you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answer. You don't need to try and pry and ask the question that you think might get that you think might lead toward the rambunctious answer,
For clicks.
the grabby quote. You want to get the question that's going to make the player or the coach want to give a thoughtful answer. Sometimes that's a long, winding question. Like I asked one to John Dunn on Sunday, and he gave me a terrific answer. And sometimes it's a really quick question, and those guys are really receptive. The more thought that they can tell you put into it, the more they appreciate it, and the better of an answer you'll get.
For those who don't know, Sam is not some guy off the street. He's a great guy. You say you're from Westchester County. You go to Syracuse currently. You're at the Newhouse School of Communication. Sam, we have a pseudo history of sorts. We didn't know each other back then, but rarely do I find someone from the city who actually went to a school that I wouldn't say a rival school maybe, but a school in
rivalry. We always kick your butt.
Yeah, in similar fashion. He brings it up every time I see him. We went to city schools. You're a city guy, even though you didn't live in the city. How would you say being you traveled all this time going to school and being kind of up in the air of where you are? How would you say being kind of, I guess you would say, a nomad of sorts? You go for basketball. How would you say something in your childhood or early made you click the switches? It's going to be basketball for my life.
I don't know. I just love ball.
I just love ball. That's fantastic.
There's a situation, like there's a world where this isn't where I'm doing this for football, or I'm doing this for baseball, or I'm doing this for a whole bunch of other sports. But basketball really grabbed me. I've always loved college basketball. It's always been one of my favorite sports, if not my favorite sport. And then when I started to get a lot more active locally in college basketball, it just became my entire life. And I can't point to any one moment. The first game I ever watched, UConn Gonzaga Battle for Seattle, I think 2008. That was a great game. Going to the 2011 Big East final was a tremendous experience. But there's so many that I remember, so many games, so many moments throughout my childhood, throughout my life that I remember that just remind me why I love college basketball so much.
If you had to pick one of those moments, which moment would it be and why?
Well, aside from UConn Louisville and the Big East final in 2011, which I already mentioned, UConn Texas, January 2011, I was watching with my dad and a whole lot of my dad's family, and Kemba Walker, who until very recently was my favorite basketball player of all time, made a couple clutch shots. UConn won the game. If you can't tell, I grew up cheering for UConn. My family was from Hartford. So that game, it really stuck with me because it brought my family together. My whole family was watching that game, and it was super special.
As the MAAC season kind of comes to a close here, we're in Atlantic City now. You know where I'm going with this question. One of the best seasons since 2006, 2007. How would you describe this Marist men's basketball season?
They were the it girl of the MAAC this year. That was in my lead for the story I dropped on Sunday, but I took it out because I kind of changed the angle a little bit. But Marist had a vibe, man. This was a super fun team. They had some magic going for them. They won a lot of close games. Now, was Marist at 16-3 as good as you would expect a 16-3 basketball team to be? Probably not, but they were 16-3, and you got to respect that. 9-1 in the MAAC, and then Jackson Price goes down, Schofield goes down. It's hard to win without those guys. Even when they come back, it's hard to kind of recapture that magic. And I'm not sure when this is dropping, but probably before the Mount game tomorrow. Mount down a couple guys with injuries themselves. Marist, they're going to have to come out and value every single possession. That was what Jackson Price was telling me on Sunday. Just every single possession matters when you're Marist and you play such a slow pace. I think the Red Foxes have it in them to make a run and win this whole thing because they have such tremendous defense. They're very well coached. Josh Pasquarelli is a difference maker late in games. Jaden Daughtry is a huge difference maker that nobody talks about.
One of the most underrated in the conference.
I would go as far as to say he may be the single most underrated player in the conference. If there was an all-defensive team, he would be a unanimous selection for it. But there's not an all-defensive team, so.
Until next year, Travis.
Yeah, but I like this. I enjoyed going up to McCann the couple times I did this year. I wish I could have gotten there for the Siena game. That looked incredible.
That was the game. That was the game.
Probably the biggest crowd since who knows.
It was on the books as sold out. It was on the books as sold out.
And it looked it on ESPN too. On ESPNU. Well, I wish it could be on ESPN too. Speaking of ESPN.
Next year, Travis.
Next year's MAAC final.
Sa-
Thank you, Travis.
Sam, you're a guy who you would even consider yourself a little quirky, right?
Oh, I'm crazy.
When I first met him, we went to the diner, right? And I said, "What do you want?" And he ordered soup, but he said, "Hold the noodles." So we had broth, and we had a great discussion about MAAC basketball and whatever.
I didn't expect you to go there.
It was great. Where I'm trying to go with this is, some people might say what you do is questionable, or why.
They would be 100% correct.
So they're correct, but seriously, and I mean this. I tell you this. This guy is so dedicated to a conference that he basically, I'm not going to say brought up in the online social realm, but a lot of your posts have gone quote unquote viral, or you have really brought attention to this thing. Look to the camera. What do you want to tell the fans on X, the fans on Twitter, the fans on social, people who read your articles, your blogs, and people that genuinely support what you do? What do you want to tell them?
Well, I mean, first of all, Will, it's not only the MAAC that I love. I love all college basketball, whether it's the MAAC,
The NEC.
the NEC, the Patriot League, America East, the Ivy. Those are the 5 leagues I think I watch the most, but I watch everything. I watch the whole sport. You can hear me talk about the whole sport on my podcast, Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers.
YouTube,
Twitter, Twitch, and wherever you get your podcast.
just like the student section.
We're actually doing a show tomorrow morning where we're going over Champ Week Thursday, which is like my favorite day of the year. You can see me getting giddy all about it right now if you're watching this. It's just as good as first day of the NCAA tournament in my mind. Just so much desperation that you see around the country. But I just really appreciate everybody that reads any of my work, any of my posts, replies, interacts. I love meeting new people through college basketball. Meeting you guys and Gene behind the camera, meeting all you guys through college basketball, being my vehicle to the world of interacting with people. I've basically everyone I've met over the last couple of years outside of going to Syracuse and meeting kids in college is through college basketball. And I really appreciate every single person that reads, takes the time to listen, does anything, and anyone that appreciates my work, I appreciate them for appreciating it the same way that I know that the coaches appreciate our work and how much we appreciate what they do.
Yeah, I think just everything that you've kind of done for MAAC, just from a publicity standpoint, without kind of you taking the motion of, hey, it's nearby, why not? Basically, why not? Why not the MAAC?
So be it.
I originally I didn't even think I was going to be covering the MAAC. I just was New York basketball. Like my first year, if you go back on my
Look where you are.
If you go back on my Medium blog, which you absolutely should not do, I was writing about New York City basketball. It was Manhattan. It was Iona. It was Fordham. I mean, Iona's not the city, but it's close enough. It was. I went to Wagner LIU that year on Staten Island. The year Wagner was really good with Alex Morales, and man, I still really like if Boogie Ford didn't get hurt. If Boogie Ford didn't get hurt, they would be hosting the NEC final, and Bashir Mason would have made an NCAA tournament at Wagner. They would not have lost to Bryant at Spiro that year.
This is fantastic.
But yeah, it started as New York basketball. Then I started driving, and it became MAAC and New York basketball.
So from the car to the arenas in the city to making it to the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. Sam, you're a joy to all of us here at the MAAC and here at Marist and here at every other school. We're thrilled to have you on. Thank you for showing us a little bit about the Federman.
Well, I really appreciate you, and Derek, you too, and Gene, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate you guys kind of letting me be a part of the Marist Mafia over these last few days, and Quinnipiac guys as well. Just really appreciate all the student media and the MAAC, because you don't get a ton of it, but people my age working in this conference makes it so exciting.
Let's do it here for the student section. What a great time we had with Sam Federman, one of our on-site location guests. Sam, thank you so much. Derek, Gene behind the camera, William Rosen on hand, thank you, and let's tune in for some of these games right after this.